Going on?
Yeah.
Just I'll tell you.
Can I touch you?
Is mine.
It's really him.
Hello, Hava. This is Chico from CATV. I tried promoting you to panelist, but for some reason,
In real life.
I don't seem to be getting any sort of confirmation. Are you seeing anything on your end?
Well, I'll tell you, I can talk, but I don't have, can you hear me now, as a matter of fact?
Yes, we can hear you. I just can't, for some reason, it won't bring you over to a panelist.
Yeah, it's funny. I can talk to you, but okay, how about if I end this session and I come back and rejoin?
Sure, we'll try that.
Okay.
All right, I'll keep an eye out for you.
On the other end of my room.
I've never seen anyone talk with us who can't be added.
So that's what we do for like public comments. Yeah,
we don't
allow it off, but there's another option to.
Hello, stranger.
That's too funny.
Hey.
She sounds very broken, like in and out. You're creaking.
It must be David May or something. That's scary. It's Alicia. I don't think so. All right.
You just yeah.
Right.
There she is.
Could you add Olivia Merrill, please?
That's Sydney.
She was in.
Sydney's in. And
We
Sydney.
have,
Oh, Sydney was in
We
there.
have Sherry.
Sherry's in.
I think that's it, right?
I guess we're ready.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
All right, we're ready to start. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:01. This is the annual reorganization meeting after the election and the town meeting. So without officers, the superintendent calls the meeting to order. So the first order of business is any changes, additions, and approval of the agenda. I have a couple changes unless someone else wants to go first. Just wanted to make sure we add committee assignments and appointments. So we've got a couple charter appointments and I'd like to go through all the board committee assignments just so everyone's clear on who is doing which committee. All right, so is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Second from Hava. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Nancy
right.
says aye.
Thank you. So now we move to item 2, reorganization of the board. The first thing is a board member resignation and then an appointment. Everybody's aware of the little kerfluffle we had. Don't ask me to spell that, please. But Peter, do you want to talk to that?
So I inadvertently ended up in 2 board seats at the same time. And it seems, based on the advice of the Secretary of State's office and council, the best way to do that is resign or get out of that situation is to resign from the ongoing 3-year term and accept the new 3-year term that I got elected to last week. So I have resigned from 1 term and I'm about to take the oath to start the second one.
Okay, and that will be notarized or has been notarized and will be given to the clerk, the town clerk. I'll get that to her tomorrow. So now we have a vacancy in Peter's old seat, which
We probably need to have myself and Nancy take the oath. So we can then be in a position to vote
well,
on.
actually Nancy's already taken it. She
Oh,
did that with the town clerk.
Okay, then I guess I should probably do it so that
Good
I
point.
can do what I was
I was-
hoping to do.
She did that a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So,
The oath is in everyone's packet if you want to see a version, but Peter, you could just,
so first the vote, Vermont Oath of Allegiance. I, Peter Merrill, do solemnly affirm that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont and that I will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof, under pain and penalties of perjury, dated this 29th day of March 2023. And the oath of office. I, Peter Merrill, do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of school director for 3-year term for the state of Vermont, and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of my judgment and ability according to law. Under the pains and penalties of perjury, dated this day, the 9th of March 2023.
2022.
2022, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got, I keep on having wrong with dates.
We just lost a year.
Thank you. Okay, Alicia St. George from our office is here to notarize that. Come up and do her thing. Thank you, Alicia, for coming.
Gracias.
No,
All right.
That should do it, unless you have another.
That's it. Thank you very, very
I'll
much.
leave these with you.
we have one more in a second.
Okay. Yes. So,
So now we have a vacancy on the board, and I know we have one candidate volunteer, and Kevin Christie. So I guess I need a motion from one of the board members.
I would like to move that we appoint Kevin Coach Christie to fill out the remainder of the 3-year term, which I just vacated.
I'll second.
I have a second from Russ. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? No. All right. Thank you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
So with that said, Kevin can come to the seat next to Peter and do his oath.
I'll just swing over here, actually.
All right.
So say,
After all you did for his career.
Yeah, really.
Oh, that technical stuff.
Sydney here.
So, is there an oath there?
It's in the packet.
I, Kevin Coach Christie, do solemnly swear that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont, and that I will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof. So help me God. Under the penalties of perjury. Dated Hartford, Vermont, this 9th day of March. the oath of office. I, Kevin Coach Christie, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of school director appointed 1 year of 3-year term for the state of Vermont, and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of my judgment and ability according to law. So help me God, under the pains and penalties of perjury, dated Hartford, the 9th day of March, 2022.
I used to like it when it said Vermont, you know.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Alicia.
On the side, Alicia St. George is our new HR specialist with Linda Nash's retirement. Alicia has seen that position, so we're really excited to have her. She's been transitioning now for a couple of months, and beginning of next month, Linda retires and Alicia will be charge of HR. Big role.
Very excited.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming.
Congratulations. Your shoes to fill.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so
Yes, they
much
are.
for taking time to come down here and do that.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.
All right, now I will take any nominations from the board for board chair.
Would like to nominate Kevin Coach Christie for the position of board chair.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Welcome to the new board chair. Now Coach Christie will take over the meeting and ask for a board clerk nomination.
At this point, do we have a nomination for the board clerk's position?
Assuming he is willing, I would like to nominate Russ North.
Do we have a second?
Second,
We've got 2 seconds since one has learned that.
Yeah, you need to recognize that finger. 'Cause
Right,
poor
right.
Nancy has laryngitis so bad she can't talk.
So we have a motion and a second. Unless there's further. All in favor of Russ North for board clerk, say aye.
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 And a thumbs up. Okay, so I guess we'll move into our agenda. Under global ends, reporting, review district ends policies in relation to current events.
We did Mr. Chair, we did amend the agenda to add the committee assignments.
So you want to do this
I
first?
thought so in the
Okay, that's-
reorganization section, seems appropriate, but
Yeah.
it's at your discretion where you want to do it.
Well, we pulled them from the last.
I did give you that
Yeah.
list and I updated the list in everyone's folder with, for those who aren't here, it's in the Google folder, but of the annual committee assignments.
You have it, Coach?
Yeah, I got one thing. Had the original one from August too. So.
It just occurred to me, and I don't know if it's still relevant, but one thing I don't see here is the designee to vote on any health insurance. Negotiate, that's
Yeah.
number 3.
Number 3,
Okay,
that's what they told us to call it, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was for the annual meeting when you did that. That
But
one
I
last-
couldn't have missed something. I tried to go through everything and Sherry Torrey helped Coach and I go through all of the past meetings to try to identify all the committees. So I pulled them out of what she prepared. And this is a comprehensive list.
so that,
And I put next to the committee who was on it last year, the year we just completed. So that doesn't mean you're automatically on it for this year. I think you should kind of reaffirm that you want to do whatever committee it is you're assigned. And then for the charter commission, we actually have 2 members of the public, former school board members who would like to represent the school board
on the commission.
in the public positions on the charter commission. And you also need a school board member to be on the charter commission.
so not to be, but so number 3 also handles the statewide designee for the collective bargaining insurance.
Right. That's
Okay.
what that,
Right,
that's what
right.
that is. If you want me to further specify it.
It's on the record right
Yeah,
now, so.
yeah. The VISBIT and VHI are the 2 annual meetings that we attend as a member of the school board's insurance trust. So the VHI is the insurance piece, which is medical and dental insurance. VISBIT is like all the liability, the whole bucket of insurances, but the health initiative, Vermont Educational Health Initiative, and that's where you vote on medical and dental. Very important role coming up.
So looking at the positions, the committees, I guess we'll just go down in order that you have them. The district's facility and planning committee, Russ was our liaison to that one. So I see a thumbs up. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay. The Charter Commission, we need. Oh, okay. I looked over and they were gone. I was like, where'd they go? Where'd they go? The Charter Commission, we need a board rep for the commission. Thoughts?
Nancy's interested.
Nancy has her hand raised.
Nancy, you want to be our,
I have done it before and I would like to do it again.
okay, cool. And you'll be working with familiar friends
Yes.
that we've nominated past school board members, 2 of them. And then there's a 3rd seat that's a combined designee between the 2 boards. And my understanding is that individual is FX Flynn.
Right, that's correct. So we have Gabrielle Luke and Michelle Valesky,
Right.
school board nominees. And then FX Flynn would be a joint appointee from
Right.
both the school board and the select board.
So when would we can get a motion for that after,
We can get a motion for the complete slate, I think.
Right,
would be
right.
easiest.
Yeah. and it's noted, so.
Right.
H. Corey, Russ and Hava.
Yeah, I'd love to stay on this committee.
I have no problem staying unless somebody else wants to.
And Hava, Sister City.
Yeah, I can stay with Sister City. I have to say that we've not had, I've had a couple topical conversations. I'm not even sure if they're meeting. So clearly I have to do a better job. I'm sad to say that I wasn't sure that I was on Sister City. So,
Well, I'm hoping that, once things, calm a little bit, you guys will start planning for upcoming events.
That's probably what it is
Yeah.
the travel was so
Right.
limited
Yeah.
that they just backed off a little.
Yeah, that was the discussion at last night's select board meeting.
And one of the things that we probably need to talk about as our representative on that committee is what we would want to do for our sister city, since they formally named a rail car on their transportation system after Hartford. So we need to come up with something of note. So that's food for thought, Alva.
thank you for that, Coach.
And select board?
Again, unless somebody else wants it.
It's like a hot potato.
That's a big one,
Yeah.
big commitment as far as time, right?
Finance. Well, wait. Let me back up. I jumped. Sorry about that. Regional collaborative.
I have served on that for the last couple of years, but I note that Hava had mentioned when she first joined the board that she was interested in that. If she is interested in the position, I would be glad to step aside so she can follow her interest. Otherwise, I will be glad to continue.
I do have interest, but I would hate to take it away from somebody who's enjoying it. Would you be interested in a trade? I'll confess that I was actually a founding member of the Sister City commission. So I was on it for years and years. And I'm also very interested in that. I feel like it would be fair if someone else wanted a turn. I don't know if this is the place for wheeling and dealing. We could show up our cards and do a little bit of
Go fish.
what do you feel like, Peter? What's your fancy? I mean, all of these are exciting and interesting. Except for finance. Russ, you can keep finance.
They're really, I guess I would be willing to do Sister City, but I don't want to talk that way. You had expressed an interest in the regional collaborative, and so few people have said they were really interested in that. I thought I would give you the opportunity, but if you wish to trade, I will be glad to trade.
It sounds like you're interested. I don't want to take you off of a committee that you enjoy.
All right.
So
Well,
by all means,
stay where I am.
what's that?
I said I will stay where I am then.
Yeah, if you're really enjoying that, stay where you are. I don't want to take you off of something where I'm sure you are a very wizened perspective and really add to the committee. So I don't want to for a second I could put your shoes there.
He's also had a couple of years during COVID, so he couldn't get in and really meet the kids and see the program. So it's been a strange couple of years that Peter's been on the
really
regional advisory.
But we've all faced that. So
Yeah.
I'm not unique.
Just like you have, Hava, with Sister City. Good.
Okay. And I will be glad to stay on the policy committee.
Yeah. And Russ and I, we work well together on that, I think. Unless I hear different from them.
This next one, you don't have to decide now. I put it on there because it is a committee and it's gonna be, negotiations is gonna be big in the coming year because we have all three of our employee groups up.
Well, Russ and I have been able to weather that storm before, and I think we've got some perspectives around that, so unless,
I'm up for it
Is that
unless
a
somebody else.
conflict of interest? Is that a conflict of interest for Russell?
To add on to Nancy's, I think when I first came on last year, we had discussed potentially popping me in there and replacing Russ, since he has a family member employed in the school district. I don't know if that's still how we feel about that.
well, I think when we ran into this before, because this isn't, it is Hartford, and we are uniquely poised with having a lot of relational members, across the town in a lot of different situations. And I think the last time we spoke with council, part of the reason why I serve on that, committee as well, and actually sign contracts and do that, is to separate, the other members, from that, actual, piece of the puzzle. And I think that, that's what our council had, said, and that's part of the reason why I kind of co-worked with that committee on negotiations. But if there's still, a question, and it's always good to check the temperature of things, we can always ask Bernie, his thoughts. And the thing is, the other piece to remember is there's been a lot of statutory changes in Title 16 of late, some of which even allow us to be substitute teachers, which had never, that's in Title 16 as a big no-no. And so that in itself was a major change to statute. So in order to keep all of our questions answered, my suggestion to the rest of the board would be if we could ask Tom to check with council to get that perspective, and we can bring it up at our next meeting.
Now, I don't have a problem with Russell being on the negotiating committee. I just wanted to make sure that we're covered, and I would really appreciate the double check, just so we don't get our tushes into trouble.
No,
Because I don't want to be on it.
To say, Nancy, careful what you wish for.
Yeah, really.
I just want to make sure we're covered on it legally.
And that's a point well taken, Nancy, and that's one of those reasons why we have, the backup, between auditors and attorneys, that's why we have them.
So we do have a policy on the topic too, that
Yes,
could be reviewed.
right. That would be a perfect time to kind of look at both. So,
I think the thing in negotiations to keep in mind, if I may, is that the negotiators that represent the board really take, no formal action on their own. They bring the contract to the board to approve or not.
and that's,
They're acting as your representatives when we sit at the table and iron out all the details with myself, and usually the business manager, and we're bring everything back to the board for a formal vote or approval. So it's not
Right, yeah.
Russ is acting on his own.
There's checks and balances
Yeah,
built into the
the
system.
entire board weighs in on the contract, so if you felt there was any sort of inappropriateness, it would be in the formal document. That's the binding agreement,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But, you know, to answer Nancy's, question, I think, it's always good to cross our Ts and dot our Is.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on, the Hartford Community Coalition. Nancy, is that, we can't see your thumb.
Oh, I am the executive board chair, so I would really like to stay on there.
Works for us, works for us. You've been our active voice from the board for a while, so that's great to have you there. And I would think that you would like to continue your work at the regional and state level for us as well with the School Boards Association.
Absolutely. Yes, especially after a 3-hour financial committee meeting before this one.
Yep, she's paying her dues. She's
I'm
her
paying my dues, that's right. Yes.
Community outreach. Hava and Russ, you guys have been doing an incredible job. I would hope that you would continue your efforts.
I'm thrilled to stay with this. Yeah.
Me too.
Fantastic.
Okay.
And we'll reaffirm. See, what was interesting when we did when Sherry did the analysis of all of the meetings and approvals, what had occurred was, to give you an example, we had already approved once Ann Reynolds during the course of that cycle. And then we reapproved
Noticed
her,
that too.
and now we got to reapprove her again, because technically this is the cycle that we're in.
We don't have to reapprove.
No,
But
you
no,
know what I mean.
yeah, but I think she's resigned from the committee.
Oh, really? Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch. But, that we would have
Yeah.
needed to have,
Mhm.
just as an affirmation.
I didn't know that.
I'll confirm it, but I'm pretty sure I remember that from the last H-Corey meeting.
Yes, I
think
read
you're
it in the
correct.
notes.
Okay. So we'll have to, hopefully, you guys will adjust and bring new folks to us. I know Pat Attilio, we did the last time.
I tried to make this list comprehensive, so I had, there are a couple committees where you had community member representatives, and I just wanted to make sure that we kept them on the list.
Right.
So it was Reynolds and Campbell.
Yeah, and
And
most recently Attilio.
yes,
Prior to Pat Attilio from Queechee.
yep. And then Adam Ricker and Ryan Seltzer at the town school meeting committee. So you just appointed those recently. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the assignments just discussed with the understanding that Mr. North's position on the negotiations committee is subject to review by our council.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
So that
Nice
takes
to have
care
it
of,
all in one place.
yeah.
Let's make sure we keep that up to date.
And I'd like to send a special thanks to Sherry. She did a really nice piece of research, going back through all of the minutes to make sure that, everything was covered. So thank you, Sherry.
Given the fact that this is a start of a new cycle, it's also good to recognize the important role she has played as our reporter.
Yes. And thank you. So now we're off to the review of the district sentence policies with the Kathy and Rochelle. So you have the floor.
Thank you. So we will be reporting on the ends of health and well-being. And what we thought we would do was, because the district made a commitment to both financially and in other supports to allow the White River School to branch out and explore a different kind of food service as a pilot this year. So I thought it would be appropriate to report out on the success of that program. So we're going to highlight the White River School food service. So the ingredients for a successful food program, obviously you need to have an amazing chef, and we do have an amazing chef. Chef Scott has poured himself into this endeavor, and he has the unique challenge of working within the federal guidelines to use food from both the USDA and supplement it with homemade sauce, fresh herbs, local produce from Stearns. He works with some local agencies to be able to provide that, and kind of merge those two together to really provide some amazing meals for the students. And not only does he get creative with the ingredients that he has and infuses them with local produce. You can see this is an actual salad. These are actual pictures from all of his meals. He actually accommodates dietary needs of students as well. So if, for example, he knows a student has, an allergy, or they're not can't have milk products, he makes sure that meal is there are options for that child. Like vegetarians as well, he'll make the same meal but a vegetarian version of it, so it doesn't look that different, and the child does not feel like they're standing out or they have to always get the salad because they can't have the meat, and they look different. So he does a really good job of making sure that those differences aren't standing out. And one of the other things he does is he batches for each grade. So what that means is he doesn't hold things in warmers. So the food for the next grade is always hot and ready, fresh, hasn't been sitting under a warmer for hours. So it tastes different. He's able to spend a little more money on items that kids are going to eat because the quality is better. So instead of buying lower quality yogurt, for example, he uses Cabot Greek yogurt, which is delicious. And of course, he makes most of his sauces and as much as he can from scratch. He calls it scratch cooking. And the kids, they respond saying it tastes real. It's like a home cooked meal. We can go on to the next one. When I talked to Chef Scott about how things were going, he reported to me that there's about a 10% increase each month from the beginning of school in terms of participation. His breakfasts have gone from 30 to 70 kids. Lunches are 50 to 100 every day. That's amazing. And more staff are taking advantage of buying the lunch. They rave about it. They buy the breakfast, they buy the lunch, and some of them every day. When I talked to the kids in the lunchroom, I spent a couple of lunch periods with them. These are some of the quotes from things that they said, and these are word for word. I did not make up any of these. They were very articulate and very praiseworthy. Chef really puts thought into the meals and makes options so people who have different needs are vegetarian don't feel singled out. Serving sizes are good. I feel filled up. The food is hot and fresh. I look forward to lunch every day. It tastes better than the old food. It tastes real. I asked them, how does eating this food help you learn? Because I wanted to see if if they knew if there was a connection between how they learn throughout the day. And they were very candid with me. They said it helps my learning because good food gives me more brain power. It fills me up and I can focus better. You can't focus on an empty stomach. I'm not hungry and I can think better when I'm not hungry. Me too. Yeah. Kids are eating more, which means less waste. The teachers in the cafeteria notice it. The chef notices there's a lot less going into the garbage and into the compost. And you can see there's one little girl that just wanted me to take a picture of her meal before and after. And so I did. She came right up to me afterwards. She said, see, I ate it all. I can't stop eating it. The kids really raved about the pizza. At first, they thought it wasn't. They just didn't know what it was because it was round. They were used to having square pan pizza. But now they're like, it's round. And chef doesn't just make cheese pizza. I said, he makes pepperoni, barbecue, sausage, Hawaiian, chicken Alfredo. That's amazing. I mean, no wonder they love it. What does the staff say? They notice that the kids are eating more this year and they try more foods that they haven't tried before. There's a lot more choices. They know that chef goes out of his way to get to know the students and cater to their dietary needs, whether they're vegetarian or dairy sensitive or whatever. And that the staff often purchases the meals. They said it smells amazing in the school, that they look forward to lunchtime because it's like being in your home where you're smelling a good home cooked meal. And in terms of Chef Scott, he often surveys the students. So he asks them, which of these are your most favorite meals? Which of these are your least favorite meals? And what would you like to see on the menu? And one little girl was so excited about that. She said, I asked for fish sticks. And the next week she said they were on the menu. So he's really responsive to what the kids are looking for and what they want to see, but in a healthy way. And he actually just recently got a grant that is allowing him to purchase a new freezer, which will give him a little bit more flexibility about what he can offer and keep. And he's also hoping that next year he's in the process of writing another grant to be able to get a better stove that actually has a griddle so he can be grilling instead of just baking. So he's very excited about his direction of how he wants to grow the program within the school. And I think it's been very successful, and we all thank you for supporting that endeavor at that school. So thank you very much.
Comments from the board?
Any chance of expanding this to the rest of the district?
We have talked about it. With COVID, it's been a little strange trying to get a handle on who's doing what, but we've talked about initially expanding, but in a small way, so that we didn't make any damage or to the White River School program, because it's still new. I was hesitant to take a whole school, another big school of 200 children, and add it to what Chef does. So we talked about doing the Wilder School. It seemed like a logical next step, and see how that went. But believe it or not, to my surprise, the Wilder School is quite happy with the new food service, which is the Abbey Group, and the chef that handles them sounds similar to what the chef is doing at the White River School. So it's sort of interesting. He's catering to their every need, and they're very, very happy with the Abbey Group and the meals they're getting. So I think next year we really need to dig in deep to see where to expand this, whether it's the middle school, the high school, I'm thinking proximity, or one of the smaller schools, Ottaquiche or Dauphin, just see where to go with it. But I'm also want to be cautious not to destroy what he's built at the White River School. So
Right.
it's certainly on the radar and trying to figure out what the best step is, whether we hire. He has no staff, so we need to
Right.
hire an assistant, or he needs to travel somewhere else and hire an assistant at White River School. So we've got to
Yeah. And
really
it's,
think deeply about how to do that.
it's also, like you said, really new still. So to expand too fast would not be a good idea. Let him get, sort of settled, and he's only not even been doing it a whole year yet.
The logical step was like the Wilder School.
Yeah.
'Cause it's small and it wouldn't overburden him if it was just him. But the other schools are bigger than the one he has. So we really got to dig in, figure out how to do that. Whether we expand with Scott or we hire a chef like him in each school. But it is working. It's meeting all the goals, everything we wanted to do.
Yep.
Music to my ear. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You had just mentioned that
Yes.
Chef Scott didn't really have any help and he was preparing all of the meals by himself. Are you considering potentially having students working in the culinary arts section of the tech center be making lunches with him to potentially lighten his load?
Certainly a thought that's crossed my mind over the years. I'm sure there are a lot of requirements. The biggest problem with the students from the tech center, they have very strange, times that they're there, and they have specific requirements that they have to meet as part of their curriculum. But it is an idea whether they could do some, outplacement from the culinary program would probably be the most logical. But we should probably bring that subject up.
If there are things that they could prep, well, in advance of
Exactly.
the meal and make available to help, but you also don't want to be taking undue advantage of them either. It's a fine line to walk between providing them with an opportunity to learn.
Right. It's a great question, great idea, Olivia. But it's not without some issues, because one of the problems with doing the work of the regular kitchen is you do similar things every day. And in the curriculum in culinary, they're progressing along to make sure they get the whole array of what the program involves. So sometimes it's just same thing with the building trades program. We have this, can't they help do this renovation, or can't they help with this shed we're building? Well, there's an array of things that the teacher's trying to cover, not just framing and roofing and siding. So, but that's not to say we couldn't have students who have progressed through the curriculum do, or sort of an apprenticeship or some sort of placement in the school culinary program, especially if it's like Chef Scott, who's it's an actual chef who's preparing meals from scratch. It's not heating up chicken nuggets in the oven.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I'll bring it up and see what the chef and culinary thinks. It's a good idea.
What I'd like to suggest, and not like I'm looking for more meetings for any of us, but the possibility of having just an initial brainstorming meeting with the board, Tom, Roy, because you work with the post-secondary, students, and possibly the tech center director. Because what's happening is there's going to be a major, and you noticed I emphasized major, infusion of capital into CTE. It could be anywhere upwards of $45 million going in this budget. So I would not like to see us miss out on any potential opportunity there. And so that being said, Usually I try not to mix the two, but this one is so important, to us that timing is right. And then we just passed budget adjustment. So there's an additional $6.5 million that went to Hunger Free Vermont. So you might want to take a little scan of that. I'll share the budget adjustment bill with you. Because I shared it with the town because there were some specific things in that for the town. And just as I guess this is my public comment for the moment. During budget adjustment, what happens is additional revenues that are determined eligible are redistributed so that the budget actually balances for 2022. This is still all, 2022 funding. We're working on 2023 budget, which is $7.6 billion. So that being said, it's a prime opportunity. So we just need to be poised, so to speak. So.
Yeah, I heard about the increase in funding just yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that,
Tech center.
yeah. And the thing is, depending on how entrepreneurial the different centers are, it makes a difference on your timing. So just thought I'd put it out into the universe. Okay, so thank you very much for that update, and that is great. And it's exciting, just the comments from the kids and even probably from the staff too. That's very telling. It's just very telling. Okay. Communication and support to the board. Student reps. Report.
Yes.
I think Olivia's gonna talk and Roy is probably gonna show her presentation.
Cool.
Yep, Mr. Hathorn, I believe, is pulling that up right now.
Apologize. Bear with me, Olivia, I'm coming.
Take your time.
He's got his mind on the fruits and vegetable pictures.
He's stuck.
Kathy.
It was a very nice presentation, though.
Mm.
I like the pomegranates at the end.
While we're
Thank you
waiting
for
for
patience,
Roy,
Olivia. We're ready.
Wonderful. So right now in the school, a lot of things are happening which are very exciting. First of all, the boys track team has broken the school record for the 4x800 race. This happened last weekend at the New England's track competition, and it's very, very exciting for our school because this is a very impressive milestone for us to have reached, because not only were the boys track team competing in the New England's competition after an incredible performance at states, but also to breaking our school record on top of that, which is just the cherry on top to an amazing track performance. The arts department has also received new distance guidelines, which has dramatically changed what the arts are looking like this year. Previously, there was a 6-foot spacing requirement between all musicians and singers, and that has now been reduced down to a 3-foot spacing requirement. So we can now go back into our old performance spaces like the choir room and the band room and be able to perform for a concert that has people coming in person to watch it. Of course, there are also declining COVID rates in the school, which is a great source of a lot of positivity and hope right now. And then also, we are really looking towards the next school year with course signups and things like that happening in our school as well. Like I had said earlier, right now we are really looking as a school and also with the school administration, looking into the 2022-2023 school year. And a big part of that looking into the future right now is student course signups. And the way that Hartford High School does course signups is very, very unique in the fact that we incorporate a lot of student choice into classes. So there are a certain number of credits that you need to get in order to graduate, but students determine how they get those credits. So for example, it's required to get a PE credit, but a student can choose whether they want to take dance, or they want to do low impact sports, or if they want to do personal fitness. And so in that way, incorporating their own interests and really a personalized approach to high school into the classes that are going to be running. And this really allows for great diversity of the number of classes. And Mr. Fogg had told me that it's 94 to 95% of students who get their first choice when it comes to classes, which is really, really amazing. Because when the course catalog comes out, it is massive and it has so many different classes. And the fact that we are able to magically pull together a schedule that incorporates all of these students, all of these classes, these teachers, it's just nothing short of absolutely incredible. And several areas of appreciation that I want to focus on. First of all, Nurse Felicia Hayes, who was our COVID coordinator, has done some absolutely amazing work in terms of making sure that everyone in the Hartford community is informed, educated, and able to respond to the COVID situation as it's changing. Thank you so very much for your work, but also the whole health and COVID team of the Hartford School District has truly done some absolutely amazing work. And I want to make sure that we're recognizing that, especially as it's feeling like in the school, we are finally able to move out of the really, really scary and stressful situation that the pandemic had been. And of course, I can't be talking about course choices and student input when it comes to schedules without mentioning Rena Burnett, who is the schedule magician and registrar of Hartford High School. She is the one who manages to take all of the student information and compile it and turn it into this amazing schedule with the rest of the counseling and scheduling team that is able to accommodate students to the point where there's 94 to 95% of students getting their first choice. And as I said before, I just find that absolutely amazing. And we are really all so grateful to be able to participate in a school that incorporates our choice and is able to so successfully do it. Are there any questions?
I would just like to compliment you, Olivia. I don't know, might not know this, but Olivia meets with Mr. Fogg and creates a report. So she's embracing this job. She's doing the research. She's finding out what's going on in the schools to do this report. So I just want to compliment you for that.
Thank you.
I too do. I too do. I also, Olivia, want to do that. You do a great job and I appreciate it. And I would like to pass along a little praise to Sydney. Sydney was our goalie for the varsity girls, and she has done an outstanding job this year. So congratulations.
Certainly. Congratulations, Sydney.
Does Sydney want to add anything or enrich or embellish on Olivia's report?
I have nothing really to add as much as everything Olivia's pretty much said. She clarified everything going on. And thank you to Nancy and Olivia for the congratulations on the hockey season. Unfortunately, that's why I haven't been as committed to the school board, and I am sorry for that. I do want to make that a public apology. However, I now have more free time, and so I am going to try to be more committed as much as I can. And unfortunately, we ended our season Monday nights at the state championships, which we unfortunately lost to Woodstock. However, we had a great season overall, and we are very proud for how our season ended.
Thanks, Sydney.
Thanks, Sydney. Great job.
Okay, I will jump in if that's okay, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. Just quickly, a couple things. Professional staff contracts went out today. That's always a huge accomplishment because there are about 238 teachers and lots of other professionals that get contracts, and they have to be perfect because we're making that offer of another year of employment. So there's a lot of moving parts with that, but we got it done and no complaints. We too, as a staff, are looking forward to sort of returning to normal. We've had very few cases over the last several weeks, so we're feeling pretty happy. And we've had a couple of warm days that always makes people lifts people's spirits. I won't mention the things that Olivia already talked about, but boys hockey, the boys team is also going to the championship Friday night. So we're really excited about that. And the boys basketball team went to the quarterfinals. So that was a really good accomplishment for the boys basketball. I was happy to hear about boys track. I didn't know about that. And the rest I will save for the next time. We'll talk a little bit about COVID protocols. I guess one more thing that's been very exciting in the schools, we've been doing a lot of administrator searches. They usually come up a little bit before the teacher searches. Right now, the schools are all in the throes of trying to determine who's coming back, who's not coming back, what positions they have to fill, and posting positions on school spring. But the administrators usually starts in January. And we have 2 administrator vacancies. One, I will nominate someone later in the appointment section in the consent agenda, but just to tell the board and the community, we've had a really good turnout, which is very contrary to some of my colleagues around the state who've been complaining about the applicant pool. So for the Kathy Newton's replacement, Kathy's retiring this year, we had 14 very well qualified applicants, and we narrowed that down to 7 that we interviewed in the first round, and then we narrowed it to 2 and have a nomination to present later in the consent agenda. So that was really exciting. We had we always have a committee made up of teachers and staff from across the district. So that committee, I want to make sure I get everybody's names right. We had Linda Trombley from the White River School on that committee. We had Franklin Burns from the Dothanbrook School. We had Amelia Donahue, who's the principal of the Ottaquechee School, and Doug Hussius, who is the principal of the White River School. Maggie Ibrahim has been serving on all the administrator searches, make sure we're looking at equity properly and thoroughly, and Roy Hathorn. So that was a great committee. We really thank them for all their work. The process is pretty labor intensive, so it's not a little commitment. You do a lot of work to try to find the best administrators we can. The other search we have going on is the assistant principal at the middle school. So we had 17 applicants for that. Again, very well qualified from all over the state and region. We quickly narrowed that to 6 that we interviewed in the first round. And then from the 6, we chose 3 to bring back for second interview. And the same 3 are coming tomorrow afternoon for a faculty forum. So they'll present on selected topics to the faculty, and we'll get their input on the three finalists. And that committee's been Aubrey Kilinowski, who's the art teacher, Bryson Nardone, who's a social studies teacher, David Ballou is a English and English teacher, Tristan Upson, the principal, Maggie Ibrahim, the equity coordinator, Roy, and myself. So we're pretty excited about what we've been able to do and the candidates we have. very excited. We'll hear about one of them a little bit more in the consent agenda.
Cool. You know, at some point, during maybe one of our community engagement pieces, when we're just informing, you know, our neighbors about the process. And we talk about that a lot here, and you know, we're not so process oriented that we're robotic, but we also understand that good process gains good results. And the process that we utilize to hire our teachers and administrators is clearly unique. And it started when the district hired Tom. And since that time, it has evolved and morphed into a pretty cool process. And there's a reason why people of note are applying to our district. And it has a lot to do with that structure. And being that I've been involved at a lot of different levels, it's become very apparent to me that that's part of it. So kudos to Tom and his team, because that's another piece of the puzzle that makes Hartford what it is.
Yeah, we've been extremely fortunate the last few years. I think we've attracted really the best and the brightest, not to use a cliche, but that's how I feel. We've gotten some really strong applicants, and we've been able to actually hire them. We have a very nice process that starts. The kickoff is a session with me with the faculty of the school and the program. So I do an activity to make sure I'm getting everybody's input from the get-go. And then we go from there with both their written input, but also their sort of visual input. And we use that as a guide with a lot of other stuff to identify what we're looking for, to shape the first round questions, and the activities that we do to try to cull out the strongest applicant from the pool. And every time it just gets a little bit better. We keep refining it. Whoever's on the committee, we sort of tweak, and we figure out what we're looking for, what we need to do, and where we want to go, and it just sort of develops. It's been a lot of fun. This last the director of curriculum search, we got to the point where we had the two finalists, and we wanted input from the staff, but we didn't want to do a community forum for several, or faculty forum for several reasons. It's really hard to do that with 3 elementary schools. So we did a survey on specific items that we wanted information from the faculty. So we got that over the weekend, and we were able to move forward on Monday of last week. So it's pretty exciting, because you have a lot of tools at your disposal if you make use of them.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So I firmly believe that success leads to further success, and that by hiring people who are smart and interesting and have passion, you attract people who are smart and interesting and have passion. And I think that we can say that as a district, we have been working towards this point for a long time.
Yeah, I've talked to several of my colleagues around the state, and you've probably read in the newspaper several districts near here that have not been able to attract candidates for administrative positions, and they don't know what to do. So kudos to everybody who supports us and all we put into the searches and to the resources in the district, because it seems like it's really helping. Excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Any other thoughts, comments for before he goes into the COVID part? of the discussion?
I don't want to make Kathy feel bad because I don't know if Kathy will ever be replaced.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
just saying.
I was
Gonna
surprised.
try.
I was very surprised that you were letting her retire.
Well, we're still not sure. We'll see what happens with that. There's still-
She might end
still a
up
few
being a
months.
consultant, come back in another life again.
Yeah. She's laid down a couple very, very firm conditions. Something comes up, don't think about me for an interim. But we got 3 months.
I love this district.
We
It's
still have
hard to
3
leave.
months.
It's hard to leave.
Yeah. So do you want me to jump into the COVID protocols?
Please, and just so, I know we've all been getting a lot of requests for information from different parents around the district. And, we forwarded, those back to Tom and the administration. So I guess this is that point in our evening. We'll get the administration's impression on that direction.
Yeah, let me give you, I won't go into all the detail of the history of where we've been, but, since the beginning of COVID, we followed the direction of the experts, and the experts that are sort of providing the information to us, be it the CDC at the national level or our own Vermont Department of Health and the Vermont Agency of Education. This year's been very strange, as I've said a couple times before. We started the year thinking we were going to return to normal, and we quickly were dealt with the variant, Delta variant, which was very dangerous and very severe. And we went from Delta to Omicron, and we never really got to implement the recommendations from the Vermont Department of Health around the 80% vaccination rate, and not being able to wear masks. If you reach that was all delayed. And if you recall the last meeting, I said February 28th, the governor and the secretary were lifting, or were actually implementing that original condition of if the school had an 80% vaccination rate, they could consider removing their masks. Well, we had barely, well, I don't even know if we'd gotten to February 28th when the Secretary of Education, the governor, and the Department of Health decided that we didn't need the vaccination rate. We could remove the masks and made not a requirement, because it was a recommendation that on March 14th, next Monday, schools could decide if they wanted to remove the masks, regardless of vaccination rates. But I'll tell you what our vaccination rates are, just so you know. White River School these are approximate numbers. It's a little bit of not that easy to get the exact number, but WRS, White River School, 32%, Dothenbrook School is 37%, the Ottaquechee School is 38%, the Wilder School 63%, the middle school 62%, high school and tech center are 60%. So we probably weren't going to reach the 80% without a big increase in the number of students that were going to get vaccinated. And again, since the beginning, we've been aligned with the AOE and the Vermont Department of Health. And overall, across the state and country, we've had a big increase in vaccinations and a strict, sharp decrease in cases. So we all think, sort of hesitantly, everybody I've spoken to in the school, that we stick with the science. That's what we've done. It hasn't failed us yet. We've kept our schools open. So, I would recommend that we follow the directions, and on March 14th, we make masks optional. We're very clear that if someone wants to wear a mask, we support them. There's a lot of reasons why students or staff would wear them. you know, if they have symptoms or they've been sick, or someone in their household is immunodepressed. So we support anybody who wants to wear a mask, but make them optional. We have plenty of masks to provide. We have plenty of antigen tests to provide if someone's not feeling well. We'd also be really strict about anyone who has symptoms or is sick that they stay out. And if they do come in because they test and they're negative, we want them to wear a mask. But kids or staff could also choose. Some classes they would wear a mask, some they may not. Some parts of the day they may wear them. They may enjoy wearing a mask, they may like it, they may feel safer wearing it temporarily. But that seems to be the pulse of the folks I've talked to. I've had conversations with the union president. We did not do a survey because although I considered it, I felt like it would be a little divisive, you know, if I had that, you know, that percentage of staff who wanted to keep masks on and percentage who didn't. I don't know what the basis for that would be. I mean, we followed science thus far, and that's what's sort of guided us. So that's where I'm at. And I think that's, you know, my recommendation would be to follow the recommendations from the Department, the Agency of Ed and the Department of Health and the CDC, but the board is ultimately responsible for the health and well-being of the staff and students, and love to hear your opinions or questions or concerns or thoughts.
Peter?
So if I may, I'd like to share with everybody a graph. I think I can do this. We practiced before the meeting.
Can we project it?
That's what it's going to do. Okay, let's see if this works again. So,
I like the bicycle.
thank you. That's my mountain bike. My wife refers to it as my mistress, but she insists that it sleep out in the garage. So, those of you who have seen Vermont's Digger note that they have a graph in the center of their webpage, and they have for quite some while, which shows the state of COVID cases in the state of Vermont. And that enormous spike to the right of the picture is Omicron. And you will notice that we are significantly, amazingly down from how high it got at one point. The problem is that we're down relative to that. If you look where we are, we're exactly almost where we were during the heights of other variants of COVID, including the original version. And also, it needs to be recognized that the United States is leading the world in the number of cases per population. We're approaching 1 million deaths due to COVID, which is an unbelievable number. Stalin is famous for having said that 1 death is a tragedy, 1,000 deaths is a statistic. So how do you comprehend 1 million deaths? When I think about this, I think about visiting Washington, D.C. and the wall, that gash through the National Mall, which has 52,000 or so names on it, the death count from Vietnam. If something as tragic and as painful and divisive as the Vietnam War resulted in 52,000 deaths, what does 1 million deaths mean? That said, we have been successful in following the science. And I would urge that we continue to do so with the understanding that the science may well, in some not too distant time, require us to return to wearing masks. Because we have been told by the experts that there will be other variants. And there's no telling how bad or good they will be. So while wandering in the wilderness, looking for guidance, we have been fortunate to be able to rely upon the guidance that has come from science and from the team within the school that has reviewed that on our behalf and decided and advised us on how to move forward. And I would suggest that we continue to do the same.
Russ?
Question. What does the CDC say about this?
I believe the CDC was the ones who started this.
I don't know. I thought differently, but
Oh,
I think they were still suggesting masks for schools.
in schools.
Yes. And I guess,
I've been more focused on the Vermont Department of Health and the AOE. And I do think there was some discrepancy there between the guidance between Vermont and the CDC.
and I guess I'm disappointed that more staff wasn't consulted. I mean, yes, it's a divisive issue, but it's going to be divisive regardless type thing. And we have a morale problem that needs to be considered. And I think part of the problem is people don't feel they have a voice. I mean, we still may make the decision, that's up to us board members. But it's a case of respecting and listening type thing.
Well, like I said, I was prepared to do a survey, and then in consultation with the union president, we both decided against that because we thought it would pit staff against staff. And there would be no basis with that recommendation from the state of Vermont. We thought there was no basis to support keeping the masks on. We would be going against what we have followed the whole time. But again, it's up to the school, but I will honor and support whatever you decide. Some boards have decided to keep masks on, some have not. I have supported the March 14th date.
Olivia has a question.
Yes, Olivia.
At least at the high school level, would you be considering getting student input before the mask policy is changed?
That was a question, do you guys?
I was not. I was going with the March 14th recommendation from the experts at the state level. Because again, I think it would be very divisive and sort of unclear. But if the board or people wish me to go back and ask teachers and ask students, I can.
I guess. Thanks, Hava.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this. But I feel like maybe I'm not sure if this is appropriate, which maybe you can make a decision, but I see that Felicia Hayes has her hand raised, and technically she's a member of the community tonight, but given her role in the matter, it might be appropriate to hear from her now.
I'd like to hear from the board first.
Okay.
Okay. And then, we'll take, the additional input and continue the conversation from there. So if you had a particular thought as a board member, as Peter and Russ just shared.
I have several thoughts. I will start by saying that I've had several staff and community people, residents, staff residents, reach out to me today and talk about the general feeling of things moving too fast, of not being comfortable with the idea of removing masks, being worried about the stomach flu that's going around. Masks have shown to keep people's germs to themselves. People wear masks not to protect themselves, but protect those around them. It is something we do out of courtesy for our neighbors and our teachers and our classmates. It's not something that something necessarily, it's one thing, it's one small layer of personal protection, but it's a real protector for those around us. That's number one. And number two is, I'm just so surprised that our vaccination rates are this low in our schools, and that we're talking about removing masks. When there's a really easy way to make sure that schools are not slowed, delayed, set back even more with rising cases of COVID or anything in our youngest school, our youngest grades in particular, and that's through vaccination. So if we had a high rate, if we were close to that 80% vaccination rate, I would feel a lot differently about this than I do right now. I think that we have a lot of open questions about illnesses. When students come in with illnesses of any kind, will they be asked to wear a mask going forward once we release, or if we consider removing our mask rules for students? What will our mask rules be for teachers? Providers of services everywhere in Vermont and beyond are still required to wear masks because they're a contagion factor because they hit all the other people. Are we going to require our teachers to wear masks? We've already, my understanding is we've promised school teachers for this whole school year, they would be teaching an environment that is, in an environment where school children are wearing masks, and they've made decisions about whether or not they were going to teach this year based upon whether or not students were going to be wearing masks. So I have concerns about that. I think this is really problematic. Change decision about wearing masks in the middle of the school year. Right. So I'm gonna be quiet for a couple minutes and just let other people talk.
So Nancy, and then back to Olivia.
Okay. So this week, I know that you guys have gotten some of the same emails that I got, because I saw that these people, most of them are parents, have sent to the entire board. And I understand their concerns, that they feel that their children are not doing well because they have been wearing a mask. These kids have been wearing a mask for 2 years. I have concerns if we tell them that they can stop wearing their mask now. My immune system is compromised. If I had a child going into our school system, I would be insisting that my child had to wear that mask. This is on a personal level. You also have the families that have younger children that can't be vaccinated yet because they're still too young. And if a child is bringing home and there's no symptoms, but they're still coming home positive without even knowing that, they're compromising some other people at their home, at their churches, at their synagogues. I am really concerned that, that we are even thinking about saying that these kids shouldn't be wearing a mask at least until the end of this school year. And I know the arguments about the teams. I've been watching team sports, and I know the kids are wearing their masks, but the kids don't seem to be bothered by it as much as the parents are bothered by it. The kids have become accustomed to it. The kids in the younger grades don't even think about it. The kids at my daycare don't even think about it, and they're 3 and 4 years old. They've got their masks. They just go and play. It's not a big deal to them. Which is not to say that I want them to be continuing to do this forever and ever. But right now, I have to agree with Hava. I don't think that our vaccination rates are high enough in our schools to be able to say safely that we can allow this. I don't think that I just think it's not a smart move on our part as the board, as we are supposed to be protecting our students and our staff, to at this point say that it's okay to not have to wear your mask unless you want to. Olivia, I turn it to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo something that you had said about the resilience of my peers and I, and the fact that we are able to wear masks or do whatever it takes to be able to continue to play our sports, perform, things like that during this pandemic. And that we have shown incredible amounts of grit throughout this pandemic, but really what we need to be able to keep up that morale and ability to keep going is a little bit of consistency. And it really does make a huge difference for there to be policies that stay in place and stay consistent throughout the school year. So I just wanted to echo something that Hava had also said, of just that when we are changing policies like that, it is sometimes like more dangerous to be changing them during the middle of the school year when people have grown accustomed to a certain expectation of school. And that expectation really was that going into this school year, we were going to be masked, we were going to be encouraging vaccination and other things like that, not to keep your family and yourself personally safe, but to protect others. And there really was that understanding that your classmates, your teachers would do whatever it takes to protect you. That was one of the reasons why we took away the option of remote learning, was that administrators felt comfortable with the fact that we would be able to protect and support all students and their families. If we are to take away that mask mandate and remove that expectation of you doing everything you can to protect others, would we potentially be willing to reinstate remote learning as a way to keep yourself safe when you're unsure about others' ability to protect you?
We're not allowed to use remote learning
Okay.
for the state, yeah. We've gone over and over this with the secretary, and by state statute, he maintains that it's not, does not count for attendance in school. Plus, we would have a bargaining unit issue, teachers, because teachers can't be required to teach in person and remotely at the same time.
But my concern really is, if we don't have the option of remote school to protect yourself, then what other ways can we make sure that students and their families feel safe with their children in school right now, when cases are still at the height of Delta and the original COVID?
Good question. I think before I ask Tom to chime back in, Peter.
So I am not a proponent of removing masks. I'm not a proponent of keeping masks. I'm a proponent of doing what has worked, which is relying on the evaluation of our internal resources about what is safest for the school. I have seen the issue of masks turn into a political football. That is not anything I want to see. As an aside, if wearing a mask was truly an issue of personal choice, the people who were against wearing masks would not be unhappy when they see someone who is wearing it, because they would recognize that that person was doing their personal choice as to whether or not to protect themselves. This has become an issue of symbolism and party politics and tribalism, and I don't want to see that. What I do want to do is to do what the health experts say is the right thing to do. I am concerned, I have to admit, that there is a politicization of how this decision is being made by some of the people who are our health experts. That said, if I can't rely on the health experts, I'm in trouble. I need to have some place I can go to, which at least nominally is free of the politicization of this issue, and is doing it based upon how a decision should be made based on the evidence. And so what I'm really asking for is, what is the evidence and what does it tell us?
And just listening to my colleagues on the board and to Tom and his team, we just applauded Tom and our collective work around our hiring. And the fact that we worked hard through budget seasons, through curricular changes, through adapting our leadership models, looking at equity and inclusion, to get us to a point where our district has some really strong characteristics. And that gives us a certain amount of resiliency. To get to Russ's point about morale right now, we've all gone through collectively this emotional roller coaster. And that's that ride that we're all on, you know, like right now. And it's almost frenetic in some cases. But at the same time, I think what I heard, and I heard it, you know, from our student rep, I heard it from Hava, I heard it basically from my other fellow board members, is that need for consistency and that expectation. You know, that's kind of what got us through all of this to this day. And so before I can really make a decision personally, you know, I have to go back and look at that effect that was mentioned. You know, none of us like the yo-yo approach. You know, we're doing this today, we're doing that tomorrow. We're doing this today, we're doing that tomorrow, with no, well, I shouldn't say with no technical or medical or scientific supports. But at the end of the day, you know, our primary responsibility is the safety of approximately 1,700 kids, 430 employees, and then all of our rest of our families that are connected to that core group. And so this is not an easy call, you know, but I think that, you know, we do need to look back at a couple of the points, you know, like, for example, does it make sense to maybe revisit, that ask, for example, to our staff? Even though knowing full well it might seem as a divisive thing, it is that respect issue. We deal with that all the time in other parts of my life, where getting the voice of the affected individuals is critical. And whether we like what they say or not, and we might not, but the respect piece is you reached out and listened, and then you made a decision. They might not like it. They might like it. But at the end of the day, and it wasn't just an exercise. It was the right thing to do. Is that listen, piece. So I know I'm skirting around where we need to head, but I'm trying to get us back to that space. I think at this point, if we can open it up to some of the public comment, and then we'll come back.
Can I just make one quickie?
Yeah, sure.
I've listened to Olivia's points, and I do think if we're doing it in the name of the students, isn't it worth, or isn't it right to at least consider what they think? Again, we're not going to get around the fact that this is going to be a polarizing issue, but it's also a chance to demonstrate what democracy is about, to a degree, agree to disagree type thing, and have a rational discussion versus pointing or politicizing it all. Because unfortunately, at least in my mind, there may not necessarily be a clear-cut answer. None of them are good. And I'm judging based on personal experience, not necessarily scientific, for some of the things I do, but I do think all the input we get will help us make a best decision for all involved.
I am trying to be consistent to the process that we have been following. The process we have been following is to have the COVID team for the district assess the advice that they were getting and provide us with their recommendations on how to proceed.
That has merit. I mean,
Yes, so that's how I approach it.
yeah.
Do I like the idea of quickly and immediately deciding life is returned to normal and that we have lost the need to wear masks or care anymore? No, I don't. I am quite concerned about the exposure of people who have immune compromised issues. Those issues exist in my family. I am quite concerned about what will happen. That said, what I'm trying to be consistent to is the process that has gotten us so far as safely as we have, and has kept our schools open and functional in the face of many, many different schools throughout just the nation, but also our state having to close. And I am very concerned that we may be going too quickly just because it's springtime and we all want to get out and get back to our lives. I have a very good friend who is extremely upset at having to wear a mask. Not, I think, so much because of the mask per se, but because of the symbolism associated with it. The way it is the upfront and in your face, literally, symbol of what we have been going through. And none of us want to keep on going through this anymore. We're all tired of it. We all want to get on to whatever is next. And I understand and appreciate that. I also understand and appreciate those who have seen the cost and who are looking at the real numbers about where we still are the number of people who are still getting COVID, the number of people who are still dying, and saying, that doesn't look safe to me. Given all those conflicting things, I put my faith in the process that has got us more or less safely through this. And so that's where I'm standing.
Thanks. Can we, Roy?
Yep. You want to know who has their hands up?
Yes, please.
We have Baloo.
Hi, I didn't recognize my own name. Can I defer to Felicia first?
She
Felicia
lowered her
here?
hand, so I was just worried that maybe she stepped out for a minute.
If she's there, I would love for her.
Her hand just went back up.
Awesome, thank you.
Felicia in first.
I'll come back in. And hey, Mr. Hathorn, it's Velu.
Well, how can you have a Baloo crew if it's Velu?
No, it's the Velu crew. Thank you. I'll come back on after.
Hayes.
Felicia Hayes. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, I guess, address a couple of things. So the CDC, somebody had mentioned, what does the CDC recommend? The CDC currently recommends indoor masking based on level of community transmission, and they've changed the way they come up with that rating for high, moderate, and low. And currently, most places have moved into the moderate and low. Windsor County is currently moderate. But Vermont, and I think many other states, seem to have broken from the CDC recommendations, because that implies that transmission level is being monitored and the masking and mitigation factors are being adjusted based on transmission. So many people on the board mentioned consistency, and so it becomes very unclear and muddy and a lot of yo-yoing. So I can only imagine that's why states are doing that. But the science would say that indoor masking, whether or not that should be mandated or recommended, would be based on the level of community transmission. So yes, currently Windsor County is moderate, but next week, next month, I hope it doesn't, but it could be high. And then what do you do in response to that? So certainly consistency becomes an issue. My concern, however the board decides to vote and move forward with masking being mandatory or optional for the remainder of the year, is the messaging around that, because I think people are going to hear masks off, COVID's over, yay, we're done. And I don't think that's what science says. I don't think that's what reality is. I think that it's changing, it's transitioning. I don't think it's done. And I don't think it will be. I think it's here. But I think people are going to hear that and just think it's over. And so that then lends to masking was one of our mitigation pieces, right? So we started off 2 years ago, very strict. We were remote. There was no travel. There were all of these restrictions in place. And then slowly, as we've learned more, as the virus has changed, now here we are, March of 2022, there are no longer travel restrictions. There's distancing is being relaxed. There's vaccinations and there's more testing. And so we're certainly in a different place, but masking would be one piece. If the Agency of Education recommendations are that as of March 14th, that schools would follow the Vermont Department of Health guidance. Well, the Vermont Department of Health guidance would say that yes, you don't have to wear a mask if you're indoors unless you're at high risk or you feel the need to. But if you've had an exposure, you should wear a mask for 10 days following that exposure. If you have symptoms, you should wear a mask while you're symptomatic. If you're positive, you should wear a mask for 10 days following your positive test or your symptom onset. You should continue to test if you develop symptoms. You should continue to stay home if you're sick. And so all of those other pieces, I would just put out there for the board to consider, that when the decision gets made one way or the other for masking, that it's recognized that that's one piece, but then how does that work? So if we're saying, okay, masks are optional, but you still have to stay home if you're sick. And if you test positive, let us know, then you have to wear a mask. And do we still send out the notifications of exposure in school when that happens? So everybody, it's just, there's just, I feel like there's just more pieces in place than masking. And so the decision to continue or remove masks then has downstream effects on the rest of our protocols. So I would just ask that that be considered as well.
Very well said. Next contestant.
Nicole, Baloo, Taylor.
Thanks, Roy. I just wanted to comment back on Mr. DeBalzi and I spoke about a survey to staff, and we had spoken about how we have been following the science all along, and the district has worked really closely with the HEA about talking to us about different changes. And we've worked really closely with Felicia and the other COVID coordinators on, sending the same message. And we really felt that if we were going to send a survey, we were asking about feelings, and the feelings might not be tied to the science necessarily. And while we do care about people's feelings, the decisions that we have made thus far have been based on the science that we have basically been fed, right? We've gotten all this data from different places. And so we were careful in how we wanted to share that with people. Like, we were going to send a survey, but it's really not about feelings. It's about what the science is telling us and the risk factors we have. We, as a staff, somebody had made a comment about morale, and I think that we have always had in the back of our minds that we were going to move to a place where it might not be, mask mandate versus no mask. It might be mask mandate versus mask friendly or mask optional. I think most of us realized that we weren't ever going to get back to a place of no masking. That sort of culture has changed now. But Felicia mentioned that masks were one of our mitigation strategies. And I think the other really important one is we're not having kids come to school sick anymore, and staff. We're not having staff come to school sick anymore. It became common practice to stay home when you were sick because it might be COVID, and to mask now, I hope, when you might be contagious with something. So,
Nicole, you hit your mute. We can't hear you.
She's gone. What happened? Nicole is muted. Does she know she's muted?
Nicole, did you hit mute? Or your signal is gone?
Did she get? Did
She's
you mute
muted
her,
right at
or
the
did
moment.
She get muted
She got muted.
somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, her hand's up.
Who muted her?
I don't know where you lost me.
Oh,
There you go.
I was just going to say, I think morale might be more hurt at this point if we don't follow the science on this one as well. I also worry about the messaging we're sending if the world outside of school is going mask optional. I worry with little kids that the message might be that is school more dangerous? Is Is school a place where you have to mask? Why are we wearing masks in school if we're not wearing them in other places? So I would just like to urge you to make this decision based on the way that you've made the other decisions, while also recognizing people have really strong feelings.
Nicole, you're
Yes,
muted
thanks,
again.
Nicole.
Who's Jerry?
Yeah.
Oh, no, Jerry put
Thanks,
his hand
Nicole.
up.
Thank you. We have a
Christina.
few others.
Next one is Christina Tardy.
Hi, Christina Tardy, White River Junction. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I have one question. Is there any legal liability if the school board goes with keeping the masks? And is there any legal liability if the school board goes with not keeping the mask? Like, was there any lawyer involved? I don't know if that's funded or not, but I wonder if legal counseling was followed. And then I do have another question. What if the vaccination rates stay low compared to 80%? And like they're not gonna get higher. What if they get lower and lower? Like, what's the feeling gonna be at that point? That's it.
I can talk a little bit about the legal question. If the state was saying, keep the masks on, and the school board or the administration decided to say, no, we want them off, there could be a legal liability there. In this case, which is the reverse, the state is being looser than the school is right now and saying you can take your masks off on March 14th. And the school board either, wants to support that or doesn't. They're in a good legal place, as far as I understand and what I've researched around that. So we're doing more. We're fine.
Well, there's got to be recognized, there is always the possibility that some unhappy group of citizens could attempt to bring us to court. But I think we would have it, as Dustin said, we would be in a very strong position.
Right.
As far as the vaccination rates, I'm not sure I understand that question. They are what they are.
I think if I'm right, Ms. Tardy, I think she's asking what she heard was at one point we were shooting for 80%. Okay, and 80% disappeared. So, like, where are we really at? I think is that the question.
Yeah, those are the numbers that I'm aware of in our schools. We're not close to 80% anywhere. The elementary schools are in the 30s, high 30%. Middle school 60s, high school 60. And we've had, regular clinics trying to get folks vaccinated.
Next question.
Jerry.
Hello, Jerry Williams from Wilder, Vermont. I first of all would like to just say thank you so much for your careful and thoughtful deliberation on this issue. The discussion, it seems to me, has been from a wide range of perspectives with a lot of careful thought and respect for different ways of thinking. And as a member of this town who participates in other boards, I just want to congratulate you for that. It's so refreshing. It's wonderful. And so the issue itself, I like the idea of asking students and parents and community members about their points of view, and it still is your decision. And you're still taking the science into consideration. But I always kind of feel as a citizen out here that I don't get asked much. So I would encourage you to reach out to the community and to your community, your school community first. But I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Next.
That's it.
So let's go back to our discussion. And I'm still hearing, questions. And not that we're surprised that we're still hearing questions. But when we go back to, our group, like Peter was saying, as far as, how did we get here and how did we get and maintain a reasonable level of safety, in that decision. And now we're at a critical juncture that is as critical as some of the other junctures that we were at. And, erring on the side of more than less has seemed to be, where we've, leaned. So there's this part of me that's asking that question around why wouldn't we still continue to work towards a number that we felt was reasonably attainable at one point, which was the 80, and working in that venue with our COVID teams, knowing full well after listening to Nurse Alley and her comments about our other COVID response efforts that would still be maintained. I think there needs to be an amalgam of that somehow, but it has to be clear that these would still be the expectations. If you're sick, you stay home. If you come in contact and you've had a positive, you wear your mask. After the X number of days, whatever those procedures that are other COVID related procedures that we've used and we've used with good results. I think that's another part of the discussion, an important part, based on what I heard from Felicia. Olivia.
One more thing that I've just been mulling over as we've been talking, and especially after hearing Nurse Hayes talking about how there are many different strategies we use to mitigate COVID, like vaccinations and distancing, and that masks are only one real part of that. With schools being the way that they are, where distancing has been taken away more or less, and vaccination rates being lower than we'd like to be, does that mean that with removing masking, we have to rely more on things like going back to distancing guidelines? And what would it look like if we're trying to keep our community safe when we're relying more on other strategies besides masking?
Olivia, I think you ask a really nice question, right? It's looking for the balance of it all. If we're taking something away, what are we adding to make sure that we're maintaining the balance of health and safety?
And like, it's definitely not a question we can answer right now. Like, this has the greatest public health minds absolutely puzzled, but I feel like it's also something that we should be considering as we're discussing this policy.
Thanks, Olivia. Russ, any continued thoughts after hearing from some of our teachers and community members and the nurses?
Not right now, Coach. I mean, I'm still weighing all the factors.
Peter?
Well, I particularly liked what Ms. Hayes said about the rest of the message. The context in which whatever decision we make is expressed and passed out. Because truly, if it is, guess what? You can take off your mask, you don't need to wash your hands anymore, you get together in large crowds and it's back to the days of showing up at work even though you're really too sick to be to work and all of that, we're going to be in trouble very quickly. So all of that is terribly important. But again, because Ms. Hayes is part of the group that's providing us with the guidance, I really think that what we have done successfully is relied on that guidance. And I'm not trying to avoid the issue at all. I'm trying to say, this is the process that I put my faith in and I have stood behind and supported. And it's the process I would continue to do. And I think that we should continue to do what we have done, which is stress the importance of vaccination, to express our commitment to respecting each other with regards to not coming to school when you're sick, to thinking about how your behavior affects others. I like to think that Vermont is different in that we actually care about each other and our community in a way that other places don't seem to anymore. And that we are willing to act in ways that are inconveniencing to ourselves for the betterment of all of us. That's one of the reasons I have chosen to live in this community. And I would hope that no matter what we do, for those among us who feel uncomfortable without a mask, who have family or other things that require them to wear a mask, we be as supportive as an institution and as a community as we possibly can to their choice and respect that and hope that we, as someone once said, treat each other nicely.
I would like to echo what Peter has just said too. And I know that people that have heard me talk before, because one of my big concerns for our kids is the mental health issue. But I want people to realize that wearing a mask is not the only thing that's affecting these kiddos' mental health. There are a whole lot of other things that came into play with that. So I don't want, I just got an email, that's why I'm saying this, from another parent. And yes, it does. I've worked in early childhood education for 22 years now. And I understand where parents and other teachers are coming from. That you can't see their mouths move. You can't see the smiles on their faces. They can't see it on you as a teacher or as a parent. And I understand all of that. But the masking is not the only thing that's controlling the problem with the mental health issue. I needed to say that. I'm sorry. And again, I do understand parents. I do understand where you're coming from. But we as a board have to think about every single child who is of school age that's in our district and the kids that are coming into our school as tuition schools that are outside our district. It doesn't just affect just our kids, our local kids. And we have to, we need to remember that. And sometimes making those hard decisions is part of what we have to do as a board. Whichever way we decide to go tonight, it's going to be a hard decision for each one of us to make. And we're making it for the good of your children, to the best of our knowledge for what we know at this particular time. So thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Go ahead,
I
Howard.
really,
No, I was saying, go ahead. You know, I could see she was getting ready.
I really appreciate your thoughts on that, Nancy, about mental health. And I really value your opinion about mental health and about the general health of our kids. Thinking about health in particular, just health. Thinking about Peter's comment earlier about polarization and the polarization about this issue in particular. I like to think about health safety issues, particularly around COVID, in a way that if we take and we substitute anything else, would it make sense? If we're talking about chickenpox, not a political issue. If we're talking about a vaccination rate of 37% for chickenpox in our district, and there was a chickenpox outbreak, our county was at a moderate outbreak level of chickenpox, how would we feel about masking, unmasking, distancing in our schools for chickenpox? Absolutely can be incredibly damaging for our older population, for our immune compromised populations, will affect students who can least afford to be out of school. A massive outbreak slows down the school, just like we experienced here in Hartford when cases were at the highest. We probably had the least amount of learning going on, and we had the most amount of staff absences and student absences. I think controlling health issues can be thought about in a way that would work for almost any other health issue we could be talking about. And maybe that's how we think about depoliticizing this issue and thinking about it as general health safety issues. So again, if this were chickenpox, what would we be doing? If this were the stomach flu, what would we be doing? And that's what I try to do when I think about, are we being political about our answers, or are we being health conscious?
Tom. Based on what you've heard, so far, your thoughts?
I guess I want to clarify that not asking the staff, because we had intended to do a survey, but in discussing it, we really thought that might make it actually more polarizing and more politicized. That's why we decided not to do that, because we were moving away from the science and more into the court of sort of public opinion. So I just want to clarify that it wasn't out of, oh, I don't care what they think. I really do. I really do care about how this decision is going to impact people. Unfortunately, it's become so polarizing and so politicized. It's like a 50-50 or somewhere in that range, 40 to 60 of have people who want to and people who don't, people who are nervous and people who want to forget about it and move beyond COVID. So I'm torn. But it is getting increasingly harder to to continue the way we're going. I feel for the kids who, 2 years of not being able to see people's faces and their expressions and smiles, and I worry about some of the instruction that's really being impacted. But I also, very much want to protect the safety of the students and the staff. So I don't want to do anything that's contraindicated, but that's why I'm following the advice of our, available experts. I hope they've done their homework. The CDC, I did listen to Dr. Walensky Sunday on 60 Minutes talk about how we're moving beyond this phase of COVID. There will probably be another variant, but she was talking about, really lightening up. So I was glad that Felicia clarified the CDC piece. I'm not sure. I don't know what, if we leave here and the board decides to keep the mask on, I don't know what the next step would be for the board to decide. A higher vaccination rate. I would like to see a higher vaccination. I'm pretty shocked that it's as low as it is, because I think the overall community in Lindsay County is much higher. I don't know if we're going to get there at this point. It feels like people who have made up their mind, folks that they're going to vaccinate themselves or have to get their kids vaccinated or not. It feels like it's so widely available everywhere. It seems to me people would have decided by now. So I will support whatever the board decides. I know the town last night decided to let the mask mandate. It ends today. Last night, I guess it expired last night.
Yeah.
So there's additional pressure. We also have additional pressure from the New Hampshire schools at the tech center who have all moved away from masking. I think Hanover still has something in place until spring break, probably around now. But Mascoma and Lebanon were moving away from. I know Woodstock, the superintendent did the same as me, recommended based on the advice we've received, and the board decided not to remove the mask. So, and I also know Thetford did that. Windsor was decided next week. So it's become highly politicized and polarizing. I'm sorry about that.
Well,
I fear moving away from the science. I do fear moving away from what we've been told, because then I feel like we're really in the public, opinion arena. I think Olivia's been trying to say something.
Yes, Olivia.
Yes, thank you. One thing I've also been thinking about that's been brought up is like the way that we're sending this message, and how are we going to communicate to students what mask mandates are, how they're changing, and discussing like a conflict between what a school is saying versus what the town as a whole is saying. And this certainly will be very complicated for a lot of students to get their head around, because like developmentally, there are different things that students at different levels are trying to understand. Where with its younger students, it's expressing emotions, learning to read, write, speak, engage with the world. And then as you're getting into middle school and high school, it's what is the world around me saying? How do I participate in a society? What do I need to be a good person? As we are trying to figure out what our mask policy should be, it's also going to be a struggle to figure out how we can translate that into the developmental language of students in terms of how they view the world. And so what is the message we're trying to tell students? How are we trying to tell it? And how can we make that align with students' sense of self and the ideas that they're starting to form about what it means to be in a community?
Well, I think at this point, listening to Tom, the conversations and, to, Felicia, my mind goes to science first. And that's not like me geeking out, I mean, it's the science that has saved a lot of our lives. Those of us that have been fortunate enough to adhere to that, and for whatever reason haven't had to go through the other side, of this pandemic, we come at it, with different feelings, like Nicole was talking about, earlier, as far as the survey. I can remember April of 2020, and one of the first deaths in Vermont was a very good friend of mine. Who I just have a lot of respect for, and very outgoing, and the science didn't really play in at that point. And we lost him early. It was the day before his birthday, as a matter of fact. And that sticks in my mind. And not that he was adverse to science. I don't think that it was proliferated in the way that people really understood what was going on. And like Olivia has so well said, that messaging piece is really critical. And I know, Tom, you and the rest of the COVID team, including our two friends at the table, have worked really hard in ensuring that the message gets out there and it is clear, concise, and accurate, and consistent. And I think that's helped us to at least be where we are here, right this minute, and we do have a decision to make. And I know it's not an easy one. It's one of the tougher ones we've had to make, I'd say, the last 12 years.
Well, as I started, tonight, it sort of was sprung on us. We had all been told, that in early mid-February, that on the 28th, we were going to get back to that rule. On the 28th, if schools reached the 80% vaccination, you could choose to unmask. And sort of how it's gone this year out of the blue, we see, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go with the 14th and just everybody take your masks off. So it was sort of shocking, and it's put us in this place where we feel a little bit, unprepared or not quite ready to grapple with this, but it is here. And that's what we've been dealing with all year with the Department of Ed and the Department of Health a bit, not to throw them under the bus, but it's been a little bit shocking.
You didn't throw them under the bus, they crawled there themselves.
Yeah, and there's such mixed messages.
just
For
the
instance, the CDC now having changed that guidance, but yet the transit authority has removed the mandate on public transportation. So buses, without our mask mandate, the buses could be unmasked. So things are, it's strange. I know that whatever way the board decides to go, my messaging would be very clear. And my messaging coming into tonight, drafting letters in case the decision was to unmask on Monday, would have been very clear and very, very strong around those who choose to wear masks. We're going to support them wholeheartedly. We're going to try to explain to folks why someone might wear a mask in our communications, all the various reasons, including it's just their choice, or they prefer it. They're not comfortable yet. And all the other more scientific reasons why someone might wear one, but also being, very vigilant about people with symptoms or people who are sick, staying home and supporting them. So I like the term mask friendly and trying to be clear around that. I can tell you for 2 years, I haven't had much of a cold, and I'm always good, 1 or 2 every season. So all those years of wondering why people were wearing masks, I know. It really does help. I think a lot of other people have experienced that too. And if the board decided, to keep our masks on, I would do my best to explain why. And like I said, there are other boards around the state who are choosing to do that. And 2 of our neighbors.
So I guess a question that I didn't hear directly answered. What was the feedback from your COVID team or our COVID team to the this new direction from AOE? Because I don't have a problem in not doing what they said because your team has kept this district safe. So that you see, I'm being very emphatic about that, so.
Well, I think it's much like the conversation we've had tonight. No one has been thrilled or overwhelmed with the latest news from Montpelier that, all of a sudden we're at this magic place where we can remove the masks. But it is the experts that have, told us that they think this is safe based on the case counts and based on their research. And I do believe they've done it. It's not, but I think without it, people are very uncomfortable. In the past, when we've made a decision, we've said, this is what we've been able to rely on. This time, if we decided to keep them, it'll be, well, we didn't really believe what they told us, or we're not quite sure they did the homework thoroughly. So it's different. We feel like this, similar to maybe how all of you feel. It feels strange to move away from the experts, away from the advice we've gotten from the higher ups or the state departments. So that's what's uncomfortable. But well, obviously you have a choice, but it's not.
See, I
It
guess
wasn't clear. It wasn't. Oh,
Yeah.
Let's do this.
And I guess in trying to get to that decision point for us as a.
I think Felicia summed it up for us.
Right.
Felicia Hayes.
And that, like I said, that's what got us here safely, and so a recommendation from that team that maybe we don't just take them off and put them in, hang them up on the flagpole, like, hee-haw, it's gone. versus the other, tools that we've used in the kit that have been very effective, knowing full well that these are effective too, and they've become, like Peter said at the very beginning, this yin and yang yo-yo thing, in the public, discourse, versus, that real science piece, and it was interesting listening to the CDC Sunday, on that expose, because I watched that same one, Tom, and it wasn't as clear as you would hope, Yes. Ava.
I have kind of a logistical, practical question for you.
Sure.
I'm going over the phrase mask friendly, and maybe this isn't something we could answer tonight, but I'm curious, what would it look like in a classroom when you have masked kids and unmasked kids? And I'm thinking about what it might look like in second grade or in fifth grade, and you're asking them to work together. Are you breeding divisiveness within our classrooms, within our learning groups? Are we gonna make masked kids who maybe are trying to protect loved ones at home work with unmasked kids? Or are we are we polarizing our student population by talking about mask friendly? Can't in my mind envision how that works in a way that doesn't breed more anxiety and maybe hard feelings. So maybe I'm having trouble seeing it. I'm wondering if you could help me with that.
I think that's what we heard, in this discussion, is what is the effect going to be on this kind of flexible position around masking?
You're saying we heard the answer to that?
Excuse me. No. What I was saying is, you're right. We don't know what that dynamic's going to be like. And different kids are going to be affected different ways. Different teachers are going to be affected different ways. By that, mask friendly. I want to be safe, and I want my kids to be safe. As a teacher, coach, whoever it is, out there with that responsibility, and then to have, maybe a student go like almost in your face, nah, not me. I'm being unmasked friendly today.
Yeah, I mean, my intent was really for it to be an extension of our equity work. We accept others, whatever their choices are. We work with each other, whatever their choice. That was my perspective.
Right.
It's sort of the opposite of that. Oh, you're different. It was, we're all the same. We all have the same goals. We're all looking at, the differences don't matter. Our kids have been very accepting. We've done very well with everybody's differences, and I just felt like that was an extension of it. Some of our classmates choose to wear masks. Some choose not to. They have all these different reasons why they might be wearing a mask, or maybe they have no reason. They want to wear a mask. That's their choice. They want to have purple hair, I want to have no hair, or you want to have, well, maybe that wasn't a choice, but it just kind of happened. But those are the kind of things, that's how I would envision pursuing this, mask friendly. Having diagrams for the younger children that are a student with a mask, a student without a mask, a student with a mask, you know, these are our choices. Everybody has their reasons. It's their right to choose to wear a mask or to not, but.
You know, knowing, you know, Tom's, excuse me, just a quick second. You know, knowing how you've approached this work in general, and that whole equity component is clear because you look at things through a different lens. You know, that's part of the reason why our district has been successful too. Okay, and so I'm not afraid of that piece, but the reality of the rest of it is it's a lot of folks. You know, and we also know from that the work that we've been doing as a district around inclusion in general, it's a 24/7 plus activity, you know, and that is another piece to this puzzle. But Hava and then Olivia.
Thanks, Coach. Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my mind envisioning second graders working together in a math group or a reading group. How do we keep them feeling happy and safe together? Are we gonna force unmasked kids to wear a mask for group activities? Are we going to force kids to wear masks, work with unmasked kids in close proximity to each other? I just, logistically, I can't see this happening. Not that I think our kids are not completely capable of understanding, you know, visible and invisible differences, because I know we have amazing curriculum that works on that. One of my kids just went through it and loved it. Logistically, I just have trouble imagining on the ground in the classroom, what does that look like?
Olivia.
Thank you. Sort of speaking as a high schooler, I sort of feel like a lot of times both the world's problems and solutions are like exacerbated when you throw a whole bunch of teenagers in a building together for several hours. So I can say that, well, both high schoolers are amazing for like our resilience and understanding and like ability to be there for each other. What Hava is bringing up isn't really a hypothetical if you look at the high school right now, because there really is the question of how do you interact with your classmates who use their own autonomy to make different choices than you. Whether it's like, you know, a classmate is going to parties and is interacting with someone who tested positive. And so these are very real questions that students are asking themselves right now. And sort of things tend to trickle down from the high school level, where they become things that you can see when students have cars, they have jobs, their ability to make choices for themselves, go places on their own, and then become more apparent later in, as Hava mentioned, like second graders, first graders. So where we already have the problems of students feeling uncomfortable or unsure of how to interact with people who make different COVID-related choices than them, this is really going to be something we're going to have to thoroughly consider and grapple with as we work down to elementary schoolers and making a broader policy-wide choice. Because this isn't a hypothetical in a high school.
And we all know that kids can be mean. I love kids, but come on. Every single one of us have heard and or seen what's happened between kids just being kids. And I can just hear the oh, you're going to get sick and die because you don't wear a mask, and I'm not going to. And once again, I know every one of us have heard things like that. So I have to agree with Hava. I'm having a hard time seeing, especially the younger crowds, and even as Olivia says, that the kids have been in high school, having a consistency in their classes. If some are wearing masks and some aren't wearing masks for whatever reason. Aren't you going to be glad when this voice is completely gone tonight?
I like your other voice. Russ.
This is obviously we've talked around it. And normally Peter's arguments make perfect logical sense. I mean, I can see where it's coming from. And it is true to our governing style where we empower the superintendent to make a decision. It has to be a reasonable decision. Doesn't have to be one I agree with. But you knew there was going to be a but.
The caveat.
Unfortunately, I can't get there logically. And I'm shaped by events in my life. And I lost somebody very important to me. And it was because their actions, but I didn't do all I could do. And I promised myself I would never let that happen again. So I think I'm at a level where it's absolute Six Sigma, zero tolerance type thing. I may get to a better place as we learn more, but right now, I just can't be there.
May I?
Sure. Go ahead.
I totally respect that. I'm not joining you on the victim wagon, but somebody extraordinarily close to me died early on in COVID. One of those people, I'm going to be going to a concert in about a week and a half in his honor. He's no longer with me and I miss him constantly. A very important person to me and my family. And arguably he died because the institution he was in was caring for COVID as carefully as they should have been. So I am entirely in sympathy with that. Not a hypothetical issue for me. But at the same time, I have to approach it the way I've described because that's the way my mind works.
Absolutely.
Did you see there's no signal?
But do I want to go and say, take off your mask on the 14th?
David?
No, it scares the hell out
Says
of
no
me.
signal.
What it means. If you may remember, not that many meetings ago, I said, we're not gonna, I said, I will be damned if we do anything that puts one of our children at risk. I still feel that way.
I apologize, Peter. I just wanted him to acknowledge that something was, but I can see people nodding, so they were hearing you still. I just didn't want to make sure your message was being lost.
Right. So I can't say that you have the wrong approach. I really can't.
And I feel the same way about your approach. It's an individual. And we all treasure the lives and health of our children and staff. And we all come about it differently. So I guess where I started with this is I'm not sure we're going to resolve Peter's and I differences tonight. And we may just have to bring the matter to a vote. I just would say regardless of how it comes out, I'm willing to continue to keep an open mind as we learn more. And maybe I will get to a point where I could support complete elimination with the mask friendly and the proper supports to ensure no bullying happened. Although we should probably-
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on.
And I think it's a problem with that, because
Okay.
They're still on.
if you're in the conference itself, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, so it needs to still be, okay, got it.
So it's something between.
Internal.
Yeah.
So, so that being, said, I think. And what I really, have a lot of respect for, our process, and I think this is what Jerry was getting at, to Jerry Williams, was we're having, a very thoughtful and conversation, as a board. Knowing full well that there might not be, like a perfect, but we know we have to support the highest level of safety we can within our ability to do it. And I think at the end of the day, that's, how, I've got to, reconcile that, on my end personally. And